Hello everybody, Ace here, and thank you for taking some precious time out of your day to watch the first ever episode of Support Science. This is a project which I find very interesting, which is researching champions from other roles as possible support picks and play support champions in other roles and test if you could actually win games in a consistent manner, because I simply love the role and think it's a real shame most League players underestimate the role and therefore don't like it. The common misconception is that you're just there to walk behind your ADC like a lapdog, getting flamed while you don't save them out of every risky situation they put themselves in, while in fact the support role is one of the most impactful roles in the game. To name some examples why, when timed correctly, you can roam around the map setting up plays and leads for other laners as well as in the bot lane itself, and create vision around objectives to provide information for your entire team to help them make better decisions. So to make the role more interesting, I will research champions from other roles to find out if they are viable in the support role. For one, because I'm just curious if there are some hidden OP support picks. 2, because it might make the role a bit more popular. And 3, because I'm wondering if this idea will get me some more views, to be honest. And for those of you who don't think support is an underestimated role, just look at the out of your protected text when you play support. I mean, that's one of the signs people don't like to play support. What I will talk about in this very video is the following. First, I will explore the champ's abilities and summarize the pros and cons for this particular champ in the support role or the support player, the support champ in another role. After that, I will create a rune page which I think fits the champ best and go over my item choices. During all of this, I will do my best to explain why I came to certain choices and develop a game strategy based off my findings. When that's all set up, I will play games as a support or with the support in another role, share my findings and eventually come to a conclusion where I will answer 1 to 3 questions, starting with 1. Did you enjoy playing this champ as a support, or did you enjoy playing this support in another role? 2. Is this a viable support pick, or is this a viable other lane pick? And if yes, then 3. In what situations can you use this support pick or this support in another lane? So, let's see what we can find, starting with Vi, the Piltover Enforcer. But before we do that, I would like to play a little game I've seen on Ross Boomsuck's channel, so I'm stealing this. But I think it's very fun, a fun way to ask for subscribers basically. So instead of asking for subs and likes, let's just play a game of rock, paper and scissors based on an honor agreement between you and me, okay? If I win, you like the video and subscribe. And if you win, you can, well, I don't know, immediately close the video and dislike it so the algorithm won't recommend it, okay? Deal? Cool. So let's go. Rock, paper, scissors. So, Vi, let's just start right away with looking at her kit to see what we're working with. I've already read the ability descriptions at op.gg and this is my summary. You've got your passive, which charges a shield and activates the shield on enemy hit. You have your Q, which is a charging punch, which slows your movement speeds on charging it. And when you release it, it has denting blows on hit and reduces the armor and gives you some attack speed bonus. Also, it has a knockback, which is some CC, which is very nice. So then you have your W, which is every third attack you get an X amount of bonus damage based on your max health, 20% armor reduction and 30 till 60% attack speed for 4 seconds. And it also reduces the remaining cooldown of your passive by 3 seconds. Then you have your E, which deals some bonus damage and has 2 charges. And your ultimate, your R, dashes towards the enemy and cannot be stopped, knock aside and stun enemies which you hit when ulting to the targeted enemy, which is also some nice CC, which is also very nice. So from a support point of view, this doesn't seem that bad, to be honest. The most interesting part to me is her passive, her W, her Q and her ult, which is quite a lot, and here's my reasoning. The shield on her passive combines really well with shield bash and revitalize runes as well, which will amplify the strength of her passive, which is helpful when we go in with her Q. Her Q is some form of CC, like we said, because of the knockback, which is always nice to have as a support to set up plays. However, being a melee support, the sustain from the shield will help us to get out of the fight, and combine this with her W, the armor reduce, bonus attack speed and passive cooldown reduction, and I'm picturing some kind of tanky vanguard type of support who can set up plays for your ADC during lane phase and be a tanky teamfight disruptor during mid and late game with your ult or Q to single out backline damage dealers. for example the ADCs, mid lane mages, stuff like that. And because of her kit, I'm also picturing some kind of roam heavy support like Bard for example, but the downside with that seems to me that you will miss a lot of XP and it requires itemization, which leans away from a tanky build and more to a ability hasty, damagey and movement speedy build. But because we will fall off way quicker that way, this will mean we are relying too heavily on the early game where we have to set up plays for our teammates to snowball off of, as well as the same teammates to carry us through the late game. So that's a big gamble. So that would be more of a high elo strategy, I believe, and I would like to focus more on the lower parts of elo so I can actually use it myself as well. So with that being said, let's explore which runes and what items would fit the tanky teamfight disrupting Vi support. Now for the runes. As I've mentioned, I think Shield Bash and Revitalize would work perfect on support Vi, in theory, because of her passive, bigger shield equals stay alive and engages. To go for the full tanky build, I will go for Resolve as my primary runes, including Aftershock, because our main objective as Vi support is to use our knock-up to set up plays during lane phase and disrupting enemy teams during teamfights so we can use the extra armor sustain after immobilizing enemies. And finally, I go for Bone Plating for just that little bit of extra sustain. As my secondary runes, I think there are multiple options, but I've chosen Domination with Sudden Impact and Relentless Hunter. The reasoning for Sudden Impact is the little extra burst on hit after your Q or ultimate, and Relentless Hunter for some extra out of combat movement speed to save us out of engages. However, I think you can also go with Precision with Tenacity and Last Stand or Coup de Grace, or Sorcery with either Nimbus Cloak and Clarity to get a bit more movement speed, or Transcendence and Gathering Storm for some scaling burst damage and some ability haste as well. Now, you can also go for a Sorcery page with Phase Rush and all the other movement speed runes. However, to me, this seems like a weak choice for melee supports, and we already figured out this will cost too much XP and sustain, and we have to rely on our teammates too much in order to win games. So that's my reasoning for picking this rune page in particular. And now for the items. To play more into the shield passive, like we did with the runes, I think we should start with the Steel Shoulder Guard support item. With our passive and the runes and our focus to survive when we disrupt teamfights, I think Locket is a good mythic item to rush first. It's only 2500 gold and gives a shield ranging between 235 and 385 based on the ally level. And if we don't have any allies in range, it is a nice tool to make plays and set up your team while also surviving, which is nice. After that, I would go for either plated steel caps or Merc Threads based on the enemy comp, and after that a Frozen Heart or Zeeks for some extra mana and the Stone Plate for again the shield active. If you have a high gold income, you could go for the Stone Plate before the Frozen Heart or Zeeks. So let's just try it out. Okay, so now that everything is set, we can start playing some games. I will follow the normal mindset regarding team compositions. This means for me, I will not just blind pick Vi support. I will not play Vi support against a poke heavy bot lane like Caitlyn and Lux for example. And finally, I will not pick Vi support when my ally ADC is a scaling carry like Tristana or Twitch. To win laning phase and not just survive, we need an ADC with a reasonable amount of early game damage so they can actually follow up the plays we try to set up for them. This means a Lucian, Draven, Misfortune, ADCs like that would work just fine. So basically I will pick her when the disruptor strategy could actually work. And in my opinion that are like tank heavy enemy support lanes, or just a scaling support lane, for example a Jinx with a Lulu. They can really damage you, so that's also a nice lane to go up against. So let's just see what we got and let's dive into the games. The first game is Vi with Draven against a Jinx and a Lulu. I picked Vi in this comp because they are a scaling comp, which means they can't really hurt us the early levels of the game, because we just stat check them. This allowed me to play an aggressive early lane where I was able to set up plays without being punished too hard. My game plan was to inch forward with use of the bushes to zone them out of lane and deny them as many farm as possible, and when they step up, just punish their mispositioning by using my Q to knock them back and set up an opportunity for Draven to deal a good amount of damage to render them useless during the lane phase. This went surprisingly well, I have to admit. I was able to land my Q and walk out with a good amount of health and zone them off properly, winning trades. However, I didn't expect Vi's movement speed to be this low, so this strategy is hard to pull off against CC heavy comps, I believe, even if they are not poke heavy. During teamfights I was able to disrupt the teamfights, which led us to winning most of them, though I have to address the fact we had a strong teamfight composition. With that being said, our contribution was noticeable, and I think that Vi support in these kind of matchup isn't a bad pick at all, based on my experience during this game. Also, I feel like I've chosen the right strategy to make Vi a reasonable support pick. The chosen runes and item combination plays well into the necessary sustain to get out of fights alive, and I don't think more movement speed, with for example the phase rush page, would have made the difference in keeping us alive. So let's go to game 2. So for game 2 we played a Draven and a Vi versus Caitlyn and Seraphine. So to challenge my theory further, I broke one of my rules and played a game against a poke heavy and high CC comp with us using the same comp, even the same ADC, which is Draven again. As expected, the pressure you can apply against a high ranged poke heavy high CC comp is just too low to make a difference. For me, this resulted in an overcompensating mindset where I felt like I have to take more risk in order to get the needed payoffs to secure a lead in lane. And when you start doing that, my experience is that you usually end up having a bad time. And that is what happened this game. I was unable to secure the lead and just died to a point where it was just straight up inting. And from my experience, it is really hard to make a difference with Vi support when you are behind, because the strategy just doesn't work anymore. You can of course engage in teamfights to zone off their main damage dealers. However, the goal is to get out alive, and when you are behind like this, the best you can get out of these engages is a 1-for-1 kill trade, which means you can get a draw at best. This was the whole reason I've set up some ground rules, but in order to validate the theory I felt it was necessary to at least try it against an enemy comp like this to rule it out. And that's what we did, we ruled it out. You can play Vi against the high CC poke heavy high ranged comp. Now, finally, my conclusion and answers to the 3 questions, starting with 1, did you enjoy playing this champ as a support? I definitely enjoyed playing Vi support. I really like the aggressive playstyle, which is my preferred playstyle because it's a very active playstyle instead of a reactive one, and what I like the most is the playmaking ability with your Q, which allows you to move through terrain and opens up a variety of new engages. However, my prediction is that this will take quite a lot of time to master. Nevertheless, her kit is really fun in the support role and her sustain is surprisingly well. Now question 2, is this a viable support pick? And if yes, then 3, in what situations can you use this support pick? I think this could be an actual viable support pick in the right lane matchups and team comps. As we discussed, you can't pick her against a high CC pokey rangy lane matchup to start with, because you can't make any difference in the game, in my experience, and just fall off basically immediately. If the enemy bot composition is a scaling one, or with another melee champ, for example Blitz or Pantheon, it could actually work. However, high CC melee champs like Nautilus or Leona will probably win the lane because of their cancelling abilities, especially Leona. I think the best comp to pick her are the scaling ones because it allows you to put pressure on them from the start and gives the enemy very little opportunities to do something, and chances are likely they will overstep so you can punish them. Also, if the enemy comp have a lot of burst damage, you are probably better off picking an actual Vanguard or Warden type champ. The reason for this being that Vi doesn't have the gold income as a support to do either a lot of damage or being really tanky, which can end up in kill trading if the enemy burst is too big. However, for a niche pick, the disrupting playstyle can be very favorable as well as the early lane dominance. So, this was my research on the Vi support. If there are actual researchers who watch this, I know I didn't follow any scientific rules, but more my own logical reasoning, but I think that's what makes this fun and relatable for most of us slow elo players. So I tried to explain my thought process as best as possible without making this a 2-hour video. I would really love to know what your thoughts are on this series, which champs you would like to see me try out in the support role, what support I should try in other roles, and whatever you want to let me know to make this a cool series. So again, thanks for spending your precious time watching this video, have a great day and see you the next time. Bye!